Hello. Today we'll start with another module. We'll start with describing Azure SQL services and capabilities. So it's basically exploring relational data and exploring relational database services in Azure. Okay. First, we'll start with describing Azure SQL services and capabilities. Let's read more about them. Azure SQL is a collective term for a family of Microsoft SQL server-based database services in Azure. Specific Azure SQL services include. Okay, so basically, Azure SQL is a collective term for Microsoft SQL server-based database services. So these include SQL Server on Azure virtual machines, Azure SQL Managed Instance, Azure SQL Database, and Azure SQL Edge. SQL Server on Azure virtual machines, a virtual machine running in Azure with an installation of SQL Server. The use of a VM makes this option an infrastructure as a service solution that virtualizes hardware infrastructure for compute, storage, and networking in Azure, making it a great option for lift and shift migration of existing on-premises SQL Server installations to the cloud. So basically, what I'm running here, I'm running a virtual machine with SQL Server on it, and it's amazing to use. It's good to use when I have an on-premise server that I want to transfer to the cloud, which I use it as infrastructure as a service, SQL Server on Azure virtual machines. But keep in mind that it has it has a lot of it has a lot more responsibilities than the other types. Let's read more about them. Azure SQL Managed Instance, a platform as a service option that provides near 100% compatibility with on-premises SQL Server instances while abstracting the underlying hardware and operating system. In the first one, we're not abstracting the underlying operating system. We have operating system still running on the background. Sometimes I need to manage it myself. But in PaaS, in the platform as a service, I don't need to care about the operating system nor the hardware, and it provides near 100% compatibility with the on-premises SQL server. The service includes an automated software update management, backups, and other maintenance tasks, reducing the administrative burden of supporting a database server instance. So basically, software updates management is automated, backups are automated, maintenance tasks are automated. So basically, administrative burden is low. It's reduced to the max. While SQL Server on Azure virtual machines, you need to take care of all that by yourself. Azure SQL Database, a fully managed, highly scalable platform as a service, database service that is designed for the cloud. This service includes the core database level capabilities of on-premises SQL Server and is a good option when you need to create a new application in the cloud. So basically, it's a PaaS, platform as a server database, which is designed for the cloud. It includes the core database level capabilities. So basically, you have all the capabilities of an on-premise SQL server, and it's a good option to start from scratch. So basically, the previous two instances, the previous two services, it's good to transform from on-premise to the cloud, but here in Azure SQL database, it's better to start from scratch. Azure SQL Edge, an SQL engine that is optimized for Internet of Things scenarios that need to work with streaming time series data. So basically, we're talking IoT, Internet of Things with some timestamps when dealing with data. Azure SQL Edge is included in the list for completeness. We'll focus on the other options for more general relational database scenarios in this module. We don't really we're not we just added they just added this for the sake of adding it, nothing more. We're not going to get any more knowledge on it. because it's simple. Now we're going to take a look at the main three types. So basically, SQL Server on Azure VMs, Azure SQL Managed Instance, and Azure SQL Database. Type of cloud service, this is infrastructure, and this is platform as a service, platform as a service. SQL Server compatibility. Fully compatible with on-premise physical and virtual installations. Applications and database can be easily lift and shift migrated without any change. So it's good to transport from an on-premise to cloud. Near 100%, so it's not 100% completely. Compatibility with SQL Server. Most on-premises database can be migrated with minimal code changes by using the Azure Database Migration Service. While the Azure SQL database supports most core database level capabilities of SQL Server, some features depended on by an on-premises application may not be available. So it's not 100% dependable to be transported from an on-premise service. Now let's look at the architecture. SQL server instances are installed in a virtual machine. Each instance can support multiple databases. So basically, the server instance are installed in a virtual machine, okay, and each instance can support multiple databases. So I can have multiple databases in a single instance. While the architecture of the managed instance, each managed instance can support multiple databases. Additionally, instance pools can be used to share resources efficiently across smaller instances. Again, each managed instance can support multiple databases, and instance pools can be used where we share resources between each instance. You can provision a single database in a dedicated managed logical server, or you can use an elastic pool to share resources across multiple databases and to take advantage of on-demand scalability. So basically, when I need one service equals to one database in the Azure SQL database. But if I can elastic pool to share resources across multiple databases where I use on-demand scalability. The SLAs, the availability 99.99%, 99.99% online, 99.9995% of availability. Basically, Azure SQL database is the highest of availability possible in the three services present in front of us now. Management. You must manage all aspects of the server, include operating system and SQL Server updates, configuration, backups, and other maintenance tasks. So, I need to manage everything on the SQL Server on Azure because all aspects of the server, including operating system and SQL Server updates, configuration, backups, and other maintenance tasks. That's a lot of management. Fully automated backups, fully automated updates, backups, and recovery for the Azure SQL managed instance, and fully automated updates, backups, and recovery for the Azure SQL database. Use cases. Use this option when you need to migrate or extend an on-premises SQL Server solution and retain full control over all aspects of server and database configuration. So basically, in the SQL Server on Azure VMs, I use it when I have an on-premise and I want to have more, either migrate, I need to migrate or have extra servers on the cloud where I need to have access to all the server and database configuration. Azure SQL Managed Instance for most cloud migration scenarios, particularly when you need minimal changes to existing applications. I have an application that I don't want to change a lot of it, so I'll just migrate into Azure SQL Managed Instance. And for the Azure SQL database, use this option for new cloud solutions or to migrate applications that have minimal instance level dependencies. So no instance level is needed. Nothing is needed at all, and they can just, or I need to start a new database on the cloud. Okay. All right. So now SQL Server on Azure Virtual machines. We read a little bit about it, so let's learn more. We have more information here. SQL Server on virtual machines enables you to use full versions of SQL Server in the cloud without having to manage any on-premises hardware. This is an example of the infrastructure as service approach. SQL Server running on an Azure virtual machine effectively replicates the database running on real on-premises hardware. So basically, it's just a database that's running on Unreal on-premises, but it's just on Azure. Migrating from the system running on-premises to an Azure virtual machine is no different than moving the databases from one on-premises server to another. Basically, when moving, when migrating, it's as if we're migrating from one on-premise to another on-premise, except it's actually on Azure and it's on the cloud. This approach is suitable for migrations and applications requiring access to operating system features that might be unsupported at the platform as service level. SQL virtual machines are lift and shift ready for existing applications that require fast migration to the cloud with minimal changes. So basically, SQL virtual machines are lift and shift, so they're ready to use. You just move them. Fast migration with minimal changes. You can also use SQL Server on Azure VMs to extend existing on-premises application to the cloud in hybrid deployments. When we say hybrid deployments, basically here it's I could have on-premise SQL Server and something on Azure on the cloud. So, this is called hybrid. What is hybrid deployment? A hybrid deployment is a system where part of the operation runs on premises and part in the cloud. Your database might be part of a larger system that runs on premises, although the database elements might be hosted in the cloud. So basically, uh, part runs on premise and part in the cloud. Your database might be my database could be part of a larger system on the on premises, or some other elements might be, would be on the cloud. You can use SQL Server in a virtual machine to develop and test traditional SQL Server applications. With a virtual machine, you have the full administrative rights over the DBMS and operating system. It's a perfect choice when an organization already has IT resources available to maintain the virtual machines. Some companies don't have the IT resources to manage full databases. They just need to manage certain parts of the database. So, uh, with a virtual machine, you have the full administrative rights over the DBMS, the database management system. You have full access to it. Okay, and the operating system. These capabilities enable you to create rapid development and test scenarios when you don't want to buy on-premises non-production SQL Server hardware. Um, when you don't want to buy on-premises non-production SQL Server hardware, become lift and shift ready for existing applications that require fast migration to the cloud with minimal changes or no changes. Basically, when I want to migrate something and I don't want to make any changes, scale up the platform on which SQL Server is running by allocating more memory, CPU power, and disk space to the virtual machine. You can quickly resize an Azure virtual machine without the requirement that you reinstall the software that is running on it. So basically, uh, we can, after deploying, you can add more memory, add more RAM, add more CPU power, add more disk space to the machine, to the virtual machine that you're using to make it run faster and better. And you can already resize it very easily. It's not that hard. All right. So business benefits. Running SQL Server on virtual machines allows you to meet unique and diverse business needs through a combination of on-premises and cloud-hosted deployments, while using the same set of server products, development tools, and expertise across these environments. So, business benefits. What does a business benefit from this? It makes you help unique and diverse business needs through a combination of on-premises. So basically, if you need a hybrid deployment, while using the same set of server products, while using the same set of the servers, you're still using on-premise and cloud across these environments. It's not always easy for businesses to switch their DBMS to fully managed service. There may be specific requirements that must be satisfied in order to migrate to a managed service that requires making changes to the database and the applications that use it. So basically, requirements must be satisfied. Some companies can't fully transfer their DBMS. They have some management that they need to get their hands on. Uh, Using virtual machines can offer a solution, but using them doesn't eliminate the need to administer your DBMS as carefully as you would on premises. So you're basically just running it on premise, but you don't have the physical server. The physical server is online. You need to manage everything. You need to take care of everything by yourself. Azure SQL Managed Instance. We were talking about Azure SQL Server on Azure virtual machines. Now we're gonna talk about Azure SQL Managed Instance. Azure SQL Managed Instance. Azure SQL Managed Instance effectively runs a fully controllable instance of SQL Server in the cloud. You can install multiple databases on the same instance. So basically, you run an instance that of an SQL server that is 100% controllable. You have complete control over this instance, much as you would for an on-premises server. As much as you would, you have complete control over the instance, much as you would on an on-premises server, but SQL managed instance automates backups, software patching, database monitoring, and other general tasks. In the previous one, business benefits, where you excuse me, on the SQL server on Azure virtual machines, you would need to automate. You need to do these automating backup software patching on your own. But here it's automated. Okay. Managed instances depend on other Azure services such as Azure Storage for backups, Azure Event Hubs for telemetry, Microsoft Entra ID for authentication, Azure Key Vault for transparent data encryption, and a couple of Azure platform services that provide security and supportability features. The managed instances make connections to these services. So basically, we use uh, we use other services, Azure Storage for backups, Event Hubs for telemetry, Entra ID for authentication, Azure Key Vault for transparent data encryption, and a couple of Azure platform services that provide security and supportability features. The managed instances make connections to these services. All communications are encrypted and signed using certificates to check the trustworthiness of communicating parties. Managed instances constantly verify these certificates through certificate revocation lists. All the communication between all these services is made upon certificates, which is maintained by a service on its own. If the services are revoked, the managed instance closes the connections to protect the data. So basically, if the certification is not what's expected, it's denied. Its use cases are as follows. Consider Azure SQL Managed Instance if you want to lift and shift an on-premise SQL Server instance and all its database to the cloud, without incurring the management overhead of running SQL Server on a virtual machine. Azure SQL Managed Instance provides features not available in Azure SQL database. If your system uses features such as linked servers, service broker, a message processing system that can be used to distribute work across servers, or database mail, which enables your database to send email messages to users, then you should use managed instance. To check compatibility with an existing on-premises system, you can install Data Migration Assistant DMA. This tool analyzes your databases on SQL Server and reports any issues that could block migration to a managed instance. This tool analyzes your database on SQL. So basically, it's just an assistant for migrating data. Business benefits. Azure SQL Managed Instance enables the system administrator to spend less time on administrative tasks because the service either performs them for you or greatly simplifies those tasks. Automated tasks include operating system and database management system software installation and patching. Dynamic instance resizing and configuration backups the database replication, high availability configuration of health and performance monitoring data streams. Azure SQL Managed Instance has near 100% compatibility with SQL Server Enterprise Edition running on premises. Azure SQL Managed Instance supports Server Database Engine logins and logins integrated with Microsoft Entra ID. SQL Server Database Engine logins include a username and a password. You must enter your credentials each time you connect to the server. Microsoft Entra logins use the credentials associated with your current computer sign-in, and you don't need to provide them each time you connect to the server. Okay, now you need to talk about Azure SQL Database. Azure SQL Database is a platform as service offering from Microsoft. You create a managed database server in the cloud and then deploy your database on this server. SQL Database Server is a logical construct that acts as a central administrative point for multiple single or pool databases, logins, firewall rules, auditing rules, threat detection policies, and failover groups. Azure SQL Database is available as a single database or an elastic pool. We mentioned what is an elastic pool. Single database. This option enables you to quickly set up and run a single SQL Server database. You create and run a database server in the cloud and you access your database through this server. Microsoft manages the server, so all you have to do is configure the database, create your tables, and populate them with your data. You can scale the databases if you need more storage space, memory, or processing power. By default, resources are pre-allocated and you're charged per hour for the resources you've requested. You can also specify a serverless configuration. In this configuration, Microsoft creates its own server, which might be shared by databases belonging to other Azure subscribers. Microsoft ensures the privacy of your database. Your database automatically scales and resources are allocated or deallocated as required. Elastic Pool. This option is similar to single database, except that by default, multiple databases can share the same resources, such as memory, data storage space, and processing power through multiple tenancy. The resources are referred to as a pool. You create the pool and only your databases can use the pool. This model is useful if you have databases with resource requirements that vary over time and can help you reduce costs. For example, your payroll database might require plenty of CPU power at the end of each month as you handle payroll processing, but other times the database might become much less active. You might have another database that is used for running reports. This database might become active for several days in the middle of the month as management reports are generated, but with a lighter load at other times. Elastic Pool enables you to use the resources available in the pool and then release the resources once processing has completed. So basically, it's a pool. It's a pool of resources where you allocate specific things to be used at specific times. Use cases. When do you use? Azure SQL database gives you the best option for low cost with minimal administration. It isn't fully compatible with on-premises SQL Server installations. It's often used in new cloud projects where the application design can accommodate any required changes to your application. You can use the data migration assistant to detect compatibility issues with your databases that can impact database functionality in Azure SQL database. For more information, see overview of data migration assistant. Azure SQL database is often used for modern cloud applications that need to use the latest stable SQL server features. Applications that require high availability. Systems with a variable load that need the database server to scale up and down quickly. Business benefits. What are the benefits of the Azure SQL server? Azure SQL database automatically updates and patches the SQL server software to ensure that you're always running the latest and most secure version of the service. The scalability features of Azure SQL database ensure that you can increase the resource availability to store and process data without having to perform a costly manual upgrade. So basically, you scale as much as you need. If you need more, it will get automatically allocated for you. If you don't need anything anymore, it will be you will give up the resources that you don't need. The service provides high availability guarantees to ensure that your database are available at least 99.995% of the time. Azure SQL database supports point-in-time restore, enabling you to recover a database to the state it was in at any point in the past. Databases can be replicated to different regions to provide more resiliency and disaster recovery. Advanced threat protection provides advanced security capabilities such as vulnerability assessment to help detect and remediate potential security problems with your databases. Its threat protection also detects anomalous activities that indicate unusual and potentially harmful attempts to access or exploit your database. It continuously monitors your database for suspicious activities and provides immediate security alerts on potential vulnerabilities, SQL injection attacks, and anomalous database access patterns. Threat detection alerts provide details of the suspicious activity and recommend action how to investigate and mitigate the threat. Basically, it's threat protection and security. Auditing tracks database events and writes them to an audit log in your Azure storage account. Auditing can help you maintain regularity, compliance, understand database activity, and gain insight into discrepancies, anomalies that might indicate business concerns or suspected security violations. SQL database helps secure your data by providing encryption that protects data that is stored in the database at rest and while it's being transferred across the network in motion. So basically, all your data is secure and safe. Okay, this was a long one. Thanks for watching.